Hey, Alison, we haven't picked a subject yet, and I've just started recording because I know that there's going to be some gold coming out of this. So the question that I asked you just before I start recording is just tell everybody about yourself and what's coming up for your clients at the moment. And let's go from there.
Okay, so my name is Alison. I run a business called Two Minds, and I am all about us understanding ourselves, our minds, and our behaviour. I do that through all sorts of different disciplines. And a lot of what I've learned and who I am today is because of the journey that I'm on. So I like to talk very openly about life and how hard it can be or how difficult our minds can be
Mm.
with us. They're not always our best friends. I always talk about this powerful piece of kit that we have up here, and we need to learn how to manage it. So some of it is the way that we're wired, and some of it is each of us individually. So I like to help people look at the relationship between those two things.
Mm.
So what I'm hearing quite a lot at the moment, and we always talk about buzzwords, don't we? People talk about what's the latest buzzword. And something that I'm hearing people use is the word authenticity and being authentic, being your true self.
I'm laughing because this is something that I'm doing a retreat in Pennsylvania in April, and it's called the Path to Authenticity. So
Brilliant.
continue.
Brilliant. So I love that. I'm a big fan of us all being ourselves. I think we need to be 100%. It sounds the craziest thing that we have to work on being our true, authentic self. But because of the way that we're wired and because of the way that we all live as humans, that is quite difficult. So I hear people saying, be your best self and all these things. Brilliant. But what I don't hear people talk about as much or enough is to highlight the pitfalls that stop you being that true self.
100%. Continue. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you on this one. I get it.
And the reason why I like to talk about this is because if people think that all they need, oh, it's obviously easy. They're looking at everyone else because remember, comparisonitis is a
Yeah.
big disease that we all suffer with. So if other people are looking at everyone else thinking, well, they're obviously being themselves. So there's something wrong with me because I don't feel like I think I should.
Yeah.
So again, we're in a trap already, aren't we? That we are believing that everyone else has got it sorted and I haven't. But if we don't explore these challenges, then people will literally think, oh, I'm rubbish at this. I can't do it. I'm not good enough. And I do think that's where people get very unhappy with themselves.
And I'm going to give you a reframe on this. And I don't know if you've read the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Okay, so this is always my thing. And I love this is that how can you know success if you don't know failure? How can you know love if you don't know loss? And this kind of goes into a lot of the Carl Jung stuff and shadow work, is that you to be whole, to be authentic, you have to love all parts of yourself, not just the ones that society says. And there's I think it's the Bodhi tribe in Africa. I may have got that wrong, but I think it's the Bodhi tribe, where in that culture, fat men are adored. In Western culture, it's like ripped or whatever. Same with women, right? It's all about the aesthetic and all that. So the reason for that is that our mind's job is to keep us safe, and it connects to what is familiar.
Mhm.
And as children, we rely on adults to show us the way within our culture to conform. And that's why Aristotle said, give me the man between the age of 0 and 7. So give me the child between the age of 0 and 7, I'll show you the man. And what that's saying is the subconscious mind is 80% programmed by the time you're 7 or 8.
Yeah.
This is why successful people tend to have children that continue to be successful. It's why poor people tend to stay poor. It's why people who've come from abusive backgrounds tend to attract abusive backgrounds, because it's what's familiar. The mind doesn't know the difference between good and bad, right or wrong. And as soon as people realize that they're just points of reference, then the authenticity is to say, my mind and body is just trying to help me. And maybe my programming isn't congruent with actually my soul's purpose.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And I think we are in that, when you're in that space, obviously for me, and I think it's the same for you, Marcus, understanding ourselves through some of the neuroscience and some of the models and things that are out there that help us make sense. But when you're trying to be yourself and you are then disregarding, criticizing, not liking parts of you, which could be your uniqueness, because we are all, again, the human brain is desperate to fit in. We don't want to be left out. It goes back to cavemen days where, if you weren't fitting in, you were outside the group. But if you are trying to be something that you're not, that means you're not being yourself. There's a high chance that you won't be the wonderfulness, even if you're a bit quirky, even if you're a bit different, even if you look different, or you do things differently, or you want to do an activity or a hobby that is a bit out there. We've got to find a way to be okay to be able to do that, because if you don't, you'll be miserable.
Yeah. And so I have something called the 4 Thieves of Happiness. And I think this might explain where things go wrong. So, as I said, when you're a child, you look to other people, and the inner child, so this inner child work, is still seeking to find that, and it comes down to responsibility. So, the 4 Thieves, the 4 Thieves of Happiness, and there's the 4 pillars. So, I'll explain both of them. The first thing is you need to know what you want and why you want it. It's the why that drives the emotional behavior. So the what is the logical thought, the why is the emotional behavior. When both of those two are in play, the how will start to turn up anyway, because they're the first 2 satellites that you need to navigate your journey. And you need 3 satellites, but I've got 4. The next one is, and I think this comes down to authentic self, is your values and boundaries. Most people don't set boundaries because they don't understand their values and they don't know how to communicate it. And I've defined poor mental health as a feeling of loneliness where I'm unable to communicate my needs. That's what I feel poor mental health is. And the reason for that is my 4th pillar, which is environment. So you can know what you want, you can know why you want it, you can know your values, your beliefs, and all the rest of it. But if the environment is not congruent with the other 3 beliefs, you will never thrive. It's like, was it Einstein said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll believe that it doesn't amount to anything. Why? Because fish aren't supposed to live in trees. Exactly. Now, that's an external thing, but it's also an internal thing. So that if internally we're not creating the environment in which our beliefs can grow, and we're not listening and being present with ourselves, and we're actually listening to the voice behind the voice, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, and we're creating that vibration, we're not going to vibrate at a level that is going to attract these things in. Now comes the 4 Thieves. The 4 Thieves that come in is like your ego mind, is judgment. You're either being judged or judged. Shame, guilt, and validation. And validation and judgment, I mean, just before we started recording, this was a perfect example, is that when I give you a new perspective or a new opportunity that we might deem as being difficult, then we try and validate. I literally just had this with a client. I said, okay, what I want you to do, I said, because she was on about time, I said, I want you to take 30 minutes every day to go for a walk. I'm going to send you a track listing, and I want you to just nasal breathe. It's 30 minutes out. Oh, I don't know if that's possible. I said, you've got 24 hours a day. Why is that not? Why can you not do that? Oh, yeah, but the weather. This is a choice. I'm telling you, this is a non-negotiable. So I set a boundary. Now, if you don't do it, that's fine. But you cannot come back and say, I don't feel any better. There's a process. You're giving me your energy and I'm giving you my experience. Now, if you want to ignore it, that's fine. That's a choice. But you have to be responsible for the outcome. Now, if you do that and you don't get the outcome, then I'm responsible that maybe I've not communicated it properly or whatever. But it's 30 minutes out of 24 hours. If you're telling me that you cannot give yourself 30 minutes out of 24 hours, then no wonder you're feeling burnt out. That is a choice.
Definitely. And I think this is the bit that I feel that conversations like this help people, because so often we're in just auto. You're not pausing to realize that you're not doing something or that you're doing something.
Yeah.
I'm often asking people to look at what you're doing too much of, what you're not doing enough of, what do you need to stop doing altogether, and what do you need to start doing. And because we live in this auto world for a majority of what we're doing, our auto world for what we're thinking, our auto world for everything, we don't stop to think, well, what is actually stopping us getting the thing that you want? And that's where, people like us, Marcus, help somebody, because we create a space to allow somebody to pause and actually go, well, what actually am I doing?
Yeah.
And what isn't helping me? Because we can highlight, or we can just get somebody to slow down enough to realize that they're not doing the thing that really they know. Because I think that's what else is really interesting, is so often people know what they need to do, and then they don't find the time, or they don't make it important enough, or they don't stop, and then they beat themselves up because they knew they needed to do it, but they didn't do it anyway. And then you're in this exactly. And you're in this horrible cycle.
And so I'll give you the facts. These are my facts, another acronym. So these are my facts. The first thing is that stops people is fear. Faith over fear. I'll come back to that one because I've got a nice little analogy for that one. The next one is actually taking action, doing something, because we're expecting somebody else to do it for us.
Yeah.
You have to take the action, and you have to trust. So the next is choice. So you take the action. So fear, step into fear, faith over fear, take action, and then choose. If it goes wrong, that's fine, but just choose something, just do something. And the next one is trust. So what a lot of people say is, I don't want this, or what if this goes wrong? That's a primeval response, right? It's our caveman response. What if you flip it and you go, this is what I want rather than this is what I don't want, or this is what I'm choosing to do rather than this is what I'm not choosing to do. And then stepping forward and really focusing on that. And I want to go back to the fear one, because the analogy, I love this. Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think it is, or Temple of Doom. I can't remember which one it is, right? Sean Connery gets shot by the Nazi. And Indiana Jones has got to go and get the, what's it called? The cup, with the water in it. What's it called? The...
not the chalice.
It's a chalice, isn't it? But you know what I mean? It's the one that keeps you alive forever, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
The only way in which his dad is going to survive is by getting the chalice, right? But he's got to go through this maze. So he goes through the maze, and he obviously nearly gets his head chopped off, and then Jehovah begins with an I and all that, the rest of it. And then he gets to the last bit, and it says something like, take the leap from the lion's head. And there's this chasm. And there's no way he can get from there to there. There's nothing there. He can't see any way of crossing it. So he has to put faith over fear.
Yeah.
So his leg goes out and he leans forward. And as you look at it, you're going, he's going to die. He's going to fall into this chasm. And as he comes down, his foot stops. And he's like shocked. He picks some dust up and he throws the dust where he is. And it reveals a bridge. The bridge was always there. It was just from his perspective, he never saw it.
Great metaphor.
And that's the way you've got to think of faith over fear. This is where faith comes from. And I always say, if you're looking to buy a new car and you want a red Ford Focus, all of a sudden you start seeing red Ford Focuses. The red Ford Focuses were always there, but you hadn't set your intention on finding it.
Yeah.
That's because we spend most of our time working on what we don't want rather than what we do want.
Yeah.
So the mind doesn't know good, bad, right or wrong, no or don't know. It only gives you what you focus on.
Definitely. And I think something I would like to highlight there, Marcus, is, like you say, fear is a normal process. It's a normal response to things. whether that's something that's unknown, never been done before. So naturally, there's no reference for the brain. If it's something that's in the past that was a bit uncomfortable, then yes, there's going to be a little bit of fear. But I think one of the things I like to talk about is that if you feel comfortable all of the time, if everything is just breezing along all of the time, you're not going to grow, you're not going to stretch, you're not going to get any new, whatever it is you're looking for, new confidence, new, even at new activities. So for me, having a little bit of discomfort, sitting on the edge of your comfort zone and stepping in is the only way. And I almost want to say only way again, because it is absolutely critical that we will be doing things that will be making us feel uncomfortable.
So I want to just actually, because you've hit a really important point here, because I think we all know that, but why don't we do it? And I think I know the reason. And this is something I'm deeply passionate about, and it's the word safety. When we think of, I'm going to use the word mental health, word I hate. When we think about mental health, we never, or the general public, never think about working with people like you or I. What they do is they go to their GP will refer them on to a counsellor, or now, not all people are the same, they're just people, right? So coaches, counsellors, therapists, yeah, they may have trained in certain modalities, but this is one of the biggest challenges that we have, is that the pathway to getting support and help, because people don't want to pay for it, they don't want to put the energy into it, right? You get what you pay for, is if you go with a bunch of symptoms, people go, oh, you've got anxiety. So people start to go, oh, I've got anxiety. Now that becomes an excuse. Anything that you attach I or my to becomes your reality. Changing I or my to the now opens up opportunity. And I think the biggest problem is that people are so blinded, or they're so kind of focused on what other people are saying is the answer, is that they don't go and look for the answer for themselves. And what I mean by that is that if you want to go, if you say you're having mental health problems and you want to, you're having challenges in your life, and by taking a drug, you feel happier, crack on. If by going speaking to a counselor, it makes you feel happier, crack on. If by speaking to a psychotherapist, it makes you feel happier, crack on. If you want to speak to a coach, crack on. If you want to speak to a hypnotherapist and it works, crack on. The challenge that people have, I think, at the moment is they're not given the opportunity to understand there are multiple safe spaces that they can access, and they can choose different safe spaces dependent on where they are in their life.
Yeah. I think something that I feel we could come almost back full circle again to our true self, our authentic self, is everybody doesn't need the same thing.
Yes.
So whatever it is that you find or try to see if it works for you, and there are so many things, and I think sometimes that is what disables people, because there are so many things that are potential to help us if we are thinking about our mental health. There are so many options, but find the one. And again, it's not rocket science, and yet we don't do it. We know that there's options. We don't go and find out. We don't try things to see which is right for you, for us, so that then you're being that true self. Somebody else, oh no, don't do that, doesn't work, don't do that. No, that was their experience. But what if your experience is different to theirs? So already we're stuck in this cycle of not really knowing what to do, because we haven't found the fit yet. We haven't tried something, that old saying, have a go and do it anyway. So to feel the fear, do it anyway. It's that kind of mentality, isn't it?
Okay, screw it, let's do it. That's it.
Yeah.
Screw it, let's do it. Yeah.
But I think, just pushing yourself. And I want to come back to this choice because I think we have to consciously choose to do something, or consciously choose to not do something. So if in your head you've got all these shoulds, I should be doing this, and I ought to be doing yoga, and I ought to be doing this, and and you've got this massive list of all the things that you should or ought to be doing. because either somebody else has told you or the media is telling you or whatever. Choose to not, if you're not doing it, because otherwise you're just layering a load more pressure on top of what's already probably quite uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I think that comes down to that why. This is why, I don't know if you know Simon Sinek and his the golden circle, right? But this, I love this. And this is kind of where my journey started, which is the what is quite tangible. I know what that is. The how. Okay, I can understand that process. So I understand the what and I understand the how. Why would I want to do it? And this is why behavior change doesn't happen, right? We all know that we should probably eat vegetables, or we should all know that we should exercise, right? We even know how to do it. It's all over the internet. So why don't we? We don't do it because we don't see what the benefit is for us to do it. And if it's unfamiliar, then we don't feel safe in doing it. And that's the reason why you would work with somebody. But too many people are actually, what we're actually doing is chasing a dopamine hit. We're actually either addicted to dopamine or addicted to cortisol. And this is why when you see a lot of influence and people on social media, we're getting the dopamine hit through what I call mental masturbation. So we're seeing the yoga person that's doing that, or we're, if anybody's watching this, they're listening to this going, oh my God, I'm really, really inspired by this. And this makes complete sense. Right. Okay. My question is, why aren't you getting in contact with one of us if you're going through something? If this conversation is talking to you and one of us, you go, do you know what? Alison really seems to, I want to find out more about what Alison does. Or actually, Marcus, what he's saying, that makes sense to me. Ask me the question. How many of you have got to this point and have not put a comment in or asked a question? Why is that?
Yeah.
Why is it that you've not reached out on a DM and said, hey, I'd really like to find out a little bit more about this? Because I will tell you this, if you come on a consultation call with me, I will not choose to work with you unless you're fully invested. So I would rather not take your money and maybe signpost you somewhere else, or I'll give you something to take away and think about, because unless you're fully committed to yourself, there's no point. You don't pay me, you pay yourself.
Definitely.
And if I can't transmute your money energy into an outcome and a result for you, I am not going to work with you. Why? Because that's my true authentic self. My true authentic self is not to take energy from you. I'd love your thoughts on this. It's an insight that I've recently got when it comes to this. And I'd love people to put a comment on this, like put yes, if people are watching this. And this is this, I've noticed there's two types of people in the world. There are those that serve others so they may take from them so they can gain. And there are those that take from others to give back to everyone so everyone gains. The former is more than the latter. So if we look at that purely from a business perspective, I want people to come and work with me so they pay me. And as part of that payment, that means that I get safety and stability for myself and my family and all the rest of it. Great. But then that energy means that I can then invest that energy into other people, other places, so I can grow my business, so I can get my message, so I can help more people. If I help more people, I get more money. And that cycle comes round. Whereas there are other people out there that are saying, I want you to buy my shit just so that I can give it. So I'm not going to serve you. I'm just going to give you this quick fix. And this is the thing. They're trying to sell the quick fix dream. But life is eternal.
Yeah.
Once your body dies, the energy that is your consciousness continues in whatever form that is. So we're chasing this thing that doesn't exist.
I think that's the challenge that so many
yes.
of us have forced into almost, and for me it is a choice to step out of it. Is this immediacy, this desire for things like right now, and if I can't have it right now, if I can't have it delivered tomorrow, then I don't want it. And of course, anything to do with our human self, particularly our sensitive minds that we've all got, that take everything personally, that, there's a lot of people who are really burnt out there at the moment. And, they are looking for a quick fixed. And because they can't find it, they're just moving on to all these things, all these different things. They're flitting about, bit of this, bit of that, spending money here, spending money there. But really, they're not sitting with themselves and thinking about what really, like what I always want, what's really the problem here?
Yeah.
Really the problem here.
Yeah.
Because it's often not the thing that we think it is.
Oh,
you know, and you'll know
it
this.
Never is. I actually have a bet with my clients. I would say, if the thing you think it is the problem. But I'll give you an example. I've just come off a call with a client who had worked with me for smoking, and for some reason had gone back to smoking again. And she said, so I need to work on smoking. I said, no, it won't be anything to do with smoking. It'll be to do with connection. All bad habits. Great book by Johan Hari called Lost Connections. Every bad habit is about connection. Okay, every bad habit. So the outcome of the fact that she started smoking again was nothing to do with smoking. It was to do with the fact that she wasn't giving her time. So the mind and body went, okay, where was a time in the past where you gave yourself time? Oh, it was when you smoked. So that's the only thing I've got. It's the only tool that I've got to use. So I'm going to give you that craving back that you want to have a smoke. Thing is, even though she was smoking, she'd take like 3 drags and then just get rid of the cigarette. So she didn't even want the cigarette. The body was trying to give her time, and the body's going, we're not even giving, this isn't even working. So now it piles more pressure and more stress on, because the body's going, you need to have time, you need to relax, you need to do this, you need to do that. And she wasn't allowing herself to have time, because she said everybody else is piling this stuff. And I said, no, everybody else isn't. You are not taking responsibility to create a boundary that says, I need time. And I need time because if I have time for myself, I can serve you better.
Definitely. And I think a critical word that I heard you say there, which I believe is something that we do need to talk more about, is allowing. The word allowing, and giving yourself permission to. You know, it sounds, again, if we're tapping into the authentic self and we want to look at some of the traps and pitfalls that stop you from being your true self, is the excuses that you make, but also the fact that you have got to find a way to give yourself permission to do whatever it is, context dependent, that you need to do. Allowing yourself to take that time, allowing yourself to go and do something maybe that no one else is doing. All your friends or all the people that you know aren't doing this thing. But I think it's so important.
I have an analogy of the allowing. So I always say, imagine that life is like a river that's meandering to the ocean. And that cycle continues, right? So the river goes into the ocean, it evaporates, becomes clouds, goes back in. So that's a cycle. During that period of your life as it's meandering, people will come in and they will place a pebble and another pebble. And you don't notice these pebbles that are going into this river that is your life until eventually there's a dam. And that water backs up and backs up and backs up and backs up. And then part of your life starts to become dry, and you stop that cycle of your life. But you don't realize, because you're under so much pressure, that dam is there. And one of two things has to happen. Either the pressure will get so much that the dam will break, and then there's so much energy you don't know how to cope with all of that energy coming out of your body, coming out of your mind. The first thing you need to do is to notice the pebbles are there.
Yeah.
Being present, going, oh, become the observer of the experience rather than being the experience. And then going, oh, I've realized that I'm all dammed up. If I move that one pebble, if I make that one micro move, I've noticed a trickle. Yeah. Okay, now I know that's safe. It's like playing Jenga, right? Now I know, what's the next little micro move that I can make? Okay, right, now I've got 2 strings, and it compounds. When we make one micro move every single day, it compounds. So now I know, now I've done 1 pebble, now I've done 2 pebbles. Actually, I'm pretty good at now taking these pebbles out. I reckon I can take 4 pebbles out. Now I can take 8 pebbles out. And then you realize as that flushing comes out, I can take more pebbles out because now I'm relieving the pressure slowly but surely. And this compounds. So if we make that one moment just to observe where we are and observe the experience rather than being the experience. And they go, what do I need? I need to move a pebble. What's the pebble that I need?
Yeah.
Now, you might be able to do that yourself, but if you don't, then that's when you need an expert. That's when you need somebody that go, okay, what's the pebble that we can shift? But the thing is, you've got to shift the pebble.
Definitely. Yeah, I
And
definitely
eventually
agree.
you'll get back into your flow state and people will come and put pebbles back in the river. But once you notice that people are putting the pebbles in the river, you can take the pebbles out before they start to dam you up. And
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
kind of an analogy for life that I like to use.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. I think it reminds me of a little metaphor that I often talk about is that, you know, you might have an idea of what you want your life to look like, and that's one great big jigsaw. But how is a jigsaw made up? It's made up of lots and lots of different pieces. And how do we do a jigsaw? We can only do one piece at a time.
Yeah. And actually, I have the same sort of metaphor that I go, when you're a child, you have a jigsaw that's got 9 pieces. And your parents will teach you how to first thing you need to do is find the corner pieces, and then you put the middle pieces in. So now I've learned one move, put the corner pieces in. So now I'm going to do a 20-piece puzzle. So now I know I'm going to get the corner pieces in. Now I need to get the edge pieces in. And it might take me a little bit of time to do all the others, but I already have a foundation and a starting block to build the puzzle. Now, if I do those, let's say 20-piece puzzles enough time, I'll start to see a pattern on how these puzzles are made up. I'll start to see a construction of how that works. Now I can do 20. I know I can do 20. Now I can do a 40-piece. Now I can do an 80-piece. Now I can do a 160-piece. And now you start to enjoy the process of creation. And I think the thing that stops us enjoying the process of creation is having that safety of knowing I have the tools, I have the ability. And if you don't know how to do that, then you need somebody to. And often it's, hey, listen, you're trying to build a 32,000-piece puzzle piece. You haven't even started with a 10-piece one.
But I think the other thing, Marcus, is that people, even whether it's 20 pieces or 20,000 pieces, you still can only do one piece at a time,
do one piece
regardless of how complicated it is.
But if you've laid 10 pieces with confidence,
yeah,
then it just becomes quicker to lay the other pieces. But if you've got a pile of pieces, you've got to start by laying one piece. And if you don't know which piece that you need to lay first, then that's the lesson that you've got to learn. You've got to learn what's the one move, what's the micro move, what's the piece that I need to lay.
Definitely.
And we need to strip. I remember when I did when I was in the police, and one of the trainers came, I love this phrase, and they said, and this is the same with exams, look for the stem, not the flower. And most of the time, we're so focused on the flower that we don't realize the stem. And this kind of comes down to my strawberry analogy. I don't know if you heard me say this before. When it comes to opportunities, if you want to grow the most beautiful strawberries, plant them in horse shit. But you put straw around the horse shit to make sure the fruit doesn't go in it. Sometimes you have to get your hands dirty and put your hands in the horse shit to put the plant in there to set the seed in the first place. And then you need to tender it and look after it. And then you get to eat the beautiful fruit. But when you get to eat the beautiful fruit, you've forgotten that your hands are full of shit because you've already washed them. You've already gone through a process of cleansing. And again, nature shows us this. You know, to create something beautiful, normally something has to fall or be destroyed. You can't go against it. So sometimes the body and the mind is saying, and I'll say this with suicide, you know, having been there myself, you know, wanting to kill myself, having investigated suicides. And the one thing that I came from suicide, which is the biggest thing, is that suicide is not about killing the physical. It's about killing the thing that you've become, because that isn't who you are. And as soon as you can realize that the body and the mind is trying to help you and it's trying to give you that guidance, but it doesn't speak logic. It's giving you one piece of the puzzle. and you're looking for the whole of the set.
Exactly. And then you get overwhelmed with the whole thing, and then it gets really difficult. And and again, we're coming full circle all the time. The horse shit is almost the discomfort that we've got to go through to get. So we all the time. We are needing to pause and just think about what is actually happening right now. What do I need? Something that I talk a lot about. What do I need to allow myself to do? And what do I just need to have a go at? Just go and do it. Just go and do that thing and not try and do something that you think everyone else is expecting you to do. I think there's nothing more freeing than actually signing up for something or going and doing something, whatever that might be, or not doing is equally as important, particularly if we're talking about boundaries. And going and doing something because you can.
Yeah.
And the feeling that most people get from actually achieving something like that, it doesn't have to be major either. Something can be quite subtle and small, but in that moment, it's not subtle and small, it's massive.
Yeah. If you were going to give, so we could talk about this for hours.
We could.
You were going to, so we talked a lot about laying that first puzzle piece. We talked about that. I talked about that micro move. So if somebody is in a place, and they don't have to be overwhelmed, right? It could be imposter syndrome. It could be confidence. It could be anything that is a challenge in your life.
Yeah.
If you were to give one top tip that person could easily, so I'm a great fan of James Clear, Atomic Habits, Cue, Craving, Response, and Reward. Got to make it small, simple, easy, and achievable, right? So we get the dopamine hit. Yeah. What is the one small move that if somebody's listening to this, what's the one small move that you would say to them to go and take action on?
So I think for me, the space that I think people need to pay close attention to is when they've got something they're trying to do, and then they're putting something else on the top of it. So it's a thought, it's some sort of pressure. And I think for me, it's just noticing that. So I'm a big, being aware of things, opening. So you've got a feeling and you're about to do something and the feeling is normal, but then you add a load of other things. For me, it's maybe just jotting down that other thing. So a lovely analogy I like to use is imagine that these thoughts that you've just had about the thing that you're trying to do, or about yourself, about the thing that you're trying to do. If you could imagine that all of your thoughts were cars going by, but you were able to stand on the pavement and watch the cars going by, rather than stepping off the pavement and getting involved with all these thoughts, all these cars, which are going to hit you, which are going to hurt you, which are probably going to do damage to you. If you can just pause and just watch them, just be like, oh, there's that thought again. And even more powerfully, write it down. And when you see it written down, so you might have decided that you're going to go and do something with somebody, and you've made up that they don't really want to do it with you. There's no legs to it. There's nothing useful. By just noting it down, pausing, stopping, catching it. Yeah. Then for me, from there, you can start to look at things differently and think, that's rubbish. That's not even true. Where is the truth in that?
Yeah. So where is the evidence right now that that's true, that I say that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'll add to that. I think once you've done that step, when I call it becoming your own best friend. So if you had a friend who was feeling this way and going through this, what advice would you give to them, and why would you give it?
Yeah,
I think if we take ourselves out of it and say, a coach that I work, Rich Litvin, I don't know if you know Rich Litvin, very famous coach. I asked him a question. He said, Marcus, you're a coach, right? I'm like, yeah. He said, if a client came to you and asked you that question, what would you say? I was like, yes. But it was such a powerful coaching response, because he's right. And I think the thing to notice is that when you've done that exercise, become the observer, like you said, write it down, ask, is it true? I think the thing that also to ask is that if that isn't what you want, what do you want? And what is the one move that I can make? And it might be, I don't want to hang around with that person anymore. And you don't even need to action it. The fact that you've gone, yeah, actually that person takes my energy.
Mhm.
And that's where we come in, is that we're not doing this from a sales perspective, but the fact is you can't do it on your own. That's the one thing I've noticed.
You've got to speak up. And I think one of the biggest, but I think one of the most powerful pieces of these conversations and working with people like us, or listening to filling your head with good stuff, is that you'll realize that you're not alone. And that's 100%, probably 50% of it's 100% of 50% of actually freeing yourself to realize that you're not alone. Because, you know, if you think that you're the only one having these thoughts about ourselves, you know, some people often say to me things like, you know, do you have like doubtful thoughts about yourself, Alison? And do you have random thoughts? Like, yes,
all the time.
Exactly. You know, if we spoke to our friends, yeah, if we spoke to our friends like you sometimes speak to yourself, you know, you can be trying to do something even on a laptop, and it's like, oh, for goodness sake, you know, I know you're instantly shrieking at yourself, criticizing yourself. If we spoke to our friends like that, we wouldn't have any friends.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, do you know what? That's probably something. I mean, we'll bring this to a close in a second, but one of the things I always say to people when they come and speak to me is I always say, if you're going looking for a coach, a therapist, you're going to a counselor, ask them 2 questions. They don't need to answer the question to tell you who, but number one, have you got something that you're working on at the moment? That's the first question. The second one is, do you have a coach or somebody who you're working with on that particular one? Now, this is just my personal thing. I always go, if the person doesn't say that they have somebody that they're working with, or they're saying that they don't have any problems or challenges in their lives, run a mile, because they are not the kind of person that's going to be able to help you. Because anybody in this space who knows their stuff, it's constantly going through that growth phase. And the only difference between the people that come and see us and us is that we understand that you have to go through the discomfort, and you just have to learn to love the it's not nice. When I say love, I don't mean love in this is a really, really nice thing. It's not. It's shitty. It's horrible. I hate it. I've literally just come out of a healing crisis last week, personally. Okay. But I know that's the process, because you have to give something away before you can bring something new in. And doing that alone is so difficult.
It is, because you do then make up that you're the only one, and you'll add a load of other stuff that isn't even true. But I think something that is also important to say there is that the more you look at your stuff, the more that you catch your thoughts, and the more that you challenge yourself so that you can be you, the real you, and do things right. The more you do that, and I'm sure you've witnessed this as well, Marcus, the one thing I would say to people is the benefit of working hard and putting yourself out there is that your bounce back gets better. That's what people often say to me, you know. So are you saying that you still have, yes, still have times where I'm processing things and I'm still working things out? Boy, I know how hard it is from many years ago. But now my ability to be able to see it and bounce back is what I encourage people to keep going, because suddenly you can recover so much quicker. And I think that's something to kind of, you know, if it was a light at the end of the tunnel, is that doing the work means that eventually you can just be like, no, do you know what? I'm not going to take myself so seriously here, or I'm not going to compare myself to everyone else. And your ability to be able to do that much quicker frees you. So then you move forward.
In the army, they used to say, train hard, fight easy. And I think that's a metaphor for life. So I'm going to leave everybody with a question. And the question is going to be this, because I think the word allow is big, is how can you allow yourself to step into your true, authentic self? And I think we'll leave that as a question for people to ponder. It's how can you allow yourself to step into your true, authentic self?
Love that.
Thank you very much. This has been awesome. We're going to have to do it again.
Definitely.